You know, when you move into a new kitchen and you're cooking for the first time, and you immediately go to where you used to keep the knives and forks, but in this new kitchen, that's actually where you keep the plates. You're like, no, it's over here. There'll be a lot
Can't
of
turn the
that.
hob on.
Can't turn the hob.
The
Yeah,
hob's not
exactly.
working.
Basically, what we're saying is Lewis Hamilton is still getting used to where the knives and forks are kept and how to turn the hob on.
Hello, welcome back to The Fast and the Curious. This is the Formula One podcast that talks to the biggest names in the sport and previews and debriefs the most exciting event of our weekends.
What, when we get dinner?
I love dinner, but no, Christian, no, not our dinner. The racing. And we react to all of the breaking news as well as we follow this mad sport all around the world, all around the globe. I'm Betty Glover. Greg James isn't here. He's back next week. And we can't get rid of Christian Hugel. I have tried. I've tried my best. I just can't get rid of you. You just keep coming back. You just love it.
I just, like a bad penny, they say, don't they? But why would you want to get rid of me, Betty? We've already featured chats with 6 of the 2025 F1 grid already this year. They are on our YouTube if you want to watch them back. We've also spoke to a world champion, but today we have a huge announcement and some huge news from one of our listeners' lives. So lots of huge things, Betty Glover.
Ooh, very exciting. But we are very much ramping up for the new season, aren't we? It's pretty much started, sort of. We're going to talk pre-season testing. I've been oiling my microphone, getting ready for this new season to start. Christian's been pounding
oiling my microphone really made me. I don't know what I think about that. That made me, yeah, good.
So I've been oiling my microphone. Christian's been doing wet runs, pounding the streets around London. So we are well and truly ready, guys. We are ready for this season to come back.
I feel like we should clarify, by wet runs, you mean literally I went for a run in the rain yesterday. So yeah, wet runs.
What's another version of a wet run?
I don't really want to know, actually. But 2 things you've said that have given me the ick. Oiling my mic and wet runs both just feel a bit grim to me. So yeah, anyway, we should carry on. Pre-season testing.
Wet run as in running the streets. I don't know what kind of wet run you're thinking of, Christian.
Stop saying wet run.
We're keeping our wet runs very clean over here. Thank you. Anyway, let's talk about pre-season testing. That is why we've jumped on here. A lot of you will know about pre-season testing. But even if you do, it's been a year since we've sort of spoken about it, broken it down a little bit. I struggle to really remember what happened in my life yesterday. So, Christian, remind us, what is pre-season testing? Why does it happen? Why do we care?
Well, it is 3 days at Bahrain. There are 2 4-hour sessions a day. And we should care because shakedown or filming days, which we explained on the last episode of the podcast aside, this is the only days and time on track the teams get to run the new cars before the first race of the season. So 3 days, 2 4-hour sessions in a day. And F1 used to have loads of testing. It barely has any testing anymore. So these days are massively important for the teams to get the cars ready, really, to get everything ready to go before the first race. Because next time they're on track, they're in Australia, and it really counts.
Why have they cut testing down?
For various reasons. A lot of it is down to do with environmental reasons. They don't want cars constantly pounding the track.
Like around London.
Like me around London. It used to mean that, like, Ferrari own a racetrack. So it used to mean that teams like Ferrari with infinite money and infinite resources, it means that they could just run a test team. They had a race team and a test team. They were always testing. So it's partly because of budget. It's partly environmental reasons. It's aimed to sort of level out the pack. So testing rules are really tightly regulated now.
Interesting. And have you been stuck at your TV watching every single second of testing so far?
I've definitely not watched every single second. I've watched a lot of it and I've had it on in the background. Yes, it's been nice to go about my life, Betty, in the last couple of days with the hum of Formula One cars in the background. It feels like part of me is complete again. We've not discussed this much on the podcast. You love a F1 car noise, don't you?
Yeah, it's I can't help it. Like when we were doing the shakedowns, you'd obviously be standing there and then hear a car go past. And I genuinely could not help going, vroom. I just can't. It just comes out. Sorry, guys. It just has to happen.
That's fun. I like it.
I've got plenty of questions for you on testing and what we've witnessed so far, but so have loads of our listeners. Quite a few have been in touch. And remember, everyone, you can send us your questions anytime, any sort of question, F1 related or not, on all the socials. Fast Curious Pod, we're everywhere. You can also email us, contact@fastcuriouspod.com. Christian, all of these questions that have come in, are you okay to do them quick fire?
Yeah, we're going to have to, because we've had loads. Like, we opened up the inboxes for these and loads came in. So yeah, let's rattle through them, shall we?
Let's do it. So first one's from Jess. She says, how much will testing actually tell us about each team's chances this year?
A bit, but not loads. You can definitely get from it where teams roughly are if you analyse it in the right way. So we know from testing Sauber won't be winning the championship, and we know the teams that are up at the top are going to be sort of roughly up at the top. But McLaren last year are the best example. I was at preseason testing last year. At the end of the 3 days, we all thought Red Bull walkover again. A few races later in Miami, McLaren bought a massive upgrade. They caught up. So you can tell a little bit, but not everything. It's not a complete spoiler as to where everyone will be in the new season, because also, Betty, they're going to make changes again in the run up to the Grand Prix. After the Bahrain test, they'll make changes in between the test and the first race. They'll then keep bringing changes afterwards. So you get a little bit of a hint, but not everything.
Mia says 3 days of testing is not a lot. Do they do more days of private testing?
No, and I was digging through our inbox, and I think a lot of people were presuming that when we've been having our Christmas dinner or doing New Year celebrations, the teams have been out doing what I said they used to do at the start of the podcast, sort of their own private test. They've not. You can't do that anymore. You used to be able to do it, but now you do get a certain amount of days per year of running an old car, but there's only so much you can get for that. That runs for different reasons. This is sort of it. As I said earlier, you get shakedown or filming day, and you get testing. That is it.
I think that must be particularly difficult for someone like Carlos Sainz, who's coming into a new team, new car, new way of working. Like in our previous episode, he told us that like the steering wheel's different. Obviously, he'll be able to, hold a steering wheel and practice. But it must be tricky not having a lot of time in a Williams car, for example.
It's tricky for the drivers moving teams. It's more tricky for the rookies. If you go back years and years, drivers who had come into Formula One would be on track all winter in Formula One cars. They simply can't do that anymore. So it's very tricky for the likes of Kimi Antonelli, Gabriel Bortoleto, who haven't raced before. Really tricky for them.
All the rookies. Lizzie says, why is Bahrain used as a test track particularly?
Great question from Lizzie. Couple of reasons. Number one, it's got a really good mix of corners that F1 tracks use. So you've got some high speeds, twisty sections, you've got a couple of lower speed sections, you've got some long straights. If you sort of go across the 24 races, Bahrain's got a good mix of corners. Secondly, F1 used to do its preseason testing, typically in Spain at tracks like Jerez and Barcelona. As we both know, Betty, living in Europe in the winter, you can't guarantee the weather. Bahrain, you can usually guarantee at this time of year. Yeah, quite. You can usually guarantee warmth and sunshine, but yeah, this time it has actually been interrupted by a little bit of rain and wind. You do get Bahrain and wind, so you do get wind in Bahrain. It is in the desert. That isn't so unusual, but actually probably the most weather disrupted test we've seen since F1's been going to Bahrain. But usually you can get the weather, so the teams get plenty of running. But yeah, weather's been an interesting one this year.
They should have come to Manchester, because let me tell you, we've had 3 days of glorious blue skies and sunshine.
Why is it people who live in Manchester feel the need to advertise when it's sunny in Manchester, like overtly? I don't need to make a big deal of it when it's sunny in London.
But we've got such a bad rep, and everyone just goes on and on about how the weather in Manchester is awful. And actually, it's not as bad as it used to be back in the day. Like it's actually fine.
The council done something about it, have they?
No, but climate change probably. And so
right.
I like to make I mean it's a bad thing, but I like to make the point of it, okay?
Okay.
CA Jackson on Insta, hello CA Jackson, says any idea why the track lost power in day one of the test? Will the teams get any extra time?
We were briefly chatting, weren't we? And you said, I know there's been a power cut. So
Yeah.
it's like we saw the
That was the
power cut.
highlight.
That was the highlight. Yeah, quite simply, it was a power cut in the Shakir region. So the Bahrain International Circuit is in the Shakir area of Bahrain, and the whole area got a power cut, not just the test track. Highly unusual. And to answer CA Jackson's question, yes, they got added time at the end of the test. They got about an extra hour, I think. So yes, they did get that time back because, as we said, the 2 4-hour sessions in the day might sound a long time, but it isn't. So they did get that back.
Shaboop 401, love the name, says, what are those silver cage things behind the tyres? Good question.
Great question. These two things come up every year. The first thing we'll mention is the things that Shaboop is talking about. They are called aerodynamic rakes. A couple of things on them. Basically, it is all about testing wind flow. So they get put onto the car. There are sensors on the metal, and therefore the teams can monitor how the car is cutting through the air, where the wind is going, how the car is reacting to that. And also, some of them, the metal is slightly soft, so it bends and moves a little bit as well, and the teams can sort of see again where the air's going. The same technology applies to the paint. Now, a lot of people pick up on this on socials every year in F1 preseason testing. This isn't just any old paint that they whack on that your Dulux you get down at B&Q or your DIY hardware store. This is called hi-vis paint, which you'll have seen the teams have these lovely shiny new liveries. And then in McLaren's case, for example, they've whacked a load of slime-coloured green paint
they've
on
put
it.
so much on it.
They
Yeah.
put so much on it. Basically, that is to, again, it's a slightly thicker, more viscous material than sort of, say, water. And again, the car cuts through the air and you can see where the sort of sticky material has gone. So the teams can measure the car's airflow through the Flow-Vis paint. McLaren putting a load of it on suggests to me they were maybe looking to fix a little aerodynamic bug somewhere that they didn't quite understand.
I was going to ask,
Yeah,
why have they put so much on?
They were probably trying to get to the bottom of something they don't understand. I don't think it's a major thing. I'd be very surprised. But yeah, the rakes and the paint are all about making sure your car is cutting through the air as you expect it to. Betty, can I say a word to you? That word is correlation. Now, correlation is a word you hear a lot in testing. Again, the rakes and the paint are the same thing. Teams are allowed to test in the simulator, but it's only a simulation. When they get onto the track in Bahrain, they want to make sure that the simulation data is matched to the real life data on track, whether the two correlate. Checking your correlation is apt. So last year, McLaren had great correlation. When they strapped an upgrade onto their car, it worked. They won the Constructors' World Championship. Aston Martin, when they put an upgrade onto their car, it didn't work. So it's all about checking the cars, cutting through the air as it should do, making sure your car's hooked up to your simulator correctly and the correlation works. All aerodynamic testing.
Well answered, Christian. Loads of people have also asked, what is sandbagging and why do teams do it?
Okay, it's a bit of an old school testing thing, this. You used to have teams want to hide their performance at testing from other teams, right? So they would maybe go to a test and you'd have teams back in the day like Ferrari be super confident and they'd run the car all year, or all test, I should say, with loads of fuel, therefore go slower and therefore get to the first race of the season, take the fuel out and then qualify and just stick it on pole. And you're like, oh yeah, Ferrari are actually loads quicker than we thought. It doesn't really happen so much anymore. Teams, because they get so little testing, they need to use these 3 days to run race simulations, qualifying simulations, long run pace, short run pace, as I've just mentioned there, the aerodynamic work with the rakes and the Flow-Vis paint and checking your correlations right. They've got too much to do to mess about, really. So sandbagging nowadays probably more means they've got a lot of fuel in the car for a race pace, or teams might do So, for example, Haas have been doing loads of race simulations. So you could say they're sandbagging. They're not really. They've just got loads of fuel in the car because they want to check that the car's working with loads of fuel in, i.e. a race simulation. So you don't see it too much anymore, sandbagging. I don't think it's much of a thing.
Sandbagging, everyone, and not teabagging, which is what I accidentally called it earlier. Swiftly
Different things.
moving on.
Very different things.
Very different things. A couple of other people have messaged in saying, why do some drivers do a half day of testing and some are full? Is there a better slot to run in? And why do the drivers, and what do the drivers do when the other is in the car?
Well, what do they do when the other's in the car? Watch, look at the data, see how the car's handling from the TV pictures, learn from the engineers. Basically, they mill about and soak up as much information as they can. In terms of why they do two, the days are split in two 4-hour sessions. Some drivers and some teams like to say, I don't know, for example, Pierre Gasly, you do all day, then Jack Doohan, you do all day, and then on the final day we'll split it. Some like to get in and out and split it. It's just team and driver preference. The slot I'd want as a driver, I have to say, and I think I heard that Max Verstappen likes this, is the last slot of the last day. And I shall tell you for why. You've probably learnt the most about your car by then, so you're happiest by then.
You can really get the most out of it as well at that point.
Quite. And you've probably got sort of most information to apply. But really, it's just there'll be logic to it, but it's different compared to different teams and drivers.
If it's good enough for Max Verstappen, Christian, it will be good enough for you. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. Remember, if you've got any more questions, do send them in. And our next episode is going to be with Karun Chandok, who's going to sort of do a proper pre-season preview with us. If you've got any questions that you want to put to us or Karun, send them in, everybody. Now, Christian,
Betty.
Back to F1 testing. The big question that is on everyone's mind is who looks the fastest? Who looks the best?
Now, F1 geeks like me very much like to come out in testing and say it's too early to tell. So, Betty, we should bring into the public forum a text chat that we had earlier. Would you like to tell me what you said over text?
Oh, yeah. Hold on. What did I say? Oh, about Williams.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need to read it back. It's not like a paragraph. You just said a line.
So what I said was only 3 teams. This was after day 1 of testing. Only 3 teams of both their cars in the top 10 fastest, and 1 is Williams. Which, when you sort of first look at that, and you see, there was one, Carlos Sainz was the fastest, and you're like, wow, Williams are doing really well. You were like,
Yeah. So this goes back to what I was saying about it being too early to tell, because there's so many different variables in testing that, for example, one team might have earlier in the morning when it's colder been doing their low speed runs. Then later on, the track gets quicker because more rubber's laid down, and another team might be doing their qualifying high speed runs later. You can't really trust in testing the times. It's nowhere near as simple as, at the end of the day, looking at the times and going, oh, Williams have all been in the top 10, so they're going to get points. Day 2 of testing, Carlos Sainz was fastest. Do we think that Williams are the fastest car? Absolutely not. But where is a good thing for Carlos Sainz and Williams? Carlos did 126 laps, so, being time on track is good, so it doesn't look bad for Williams, but I wouldn't say it looked quite as good as you thought it looked, Betty, because the times aren't really relevant. The race website, check out their socials. They did a brilliant graphic on this that basically showed you the quickest times last year compared to the Constructors' Championship, and you'll see how skew if it is. It was a really good comparison to make if you look on their socials.
Let's move on to McLaren then. Because
I was just about to talk about McLaren. You read my mind, Psychic Glover.
Yeah, let's talk about McLaren then, because they're looking pretty strong, right?
I think they are looking strong. I think McLaren are looking strong. I think they will be right up there like they were at the end of last season. I think Red Bull are also looking good. And I think you're looking for consistent running time. You're looking for relative speed, bearing in mind all the sort of asterisks, as I said before. McLaren haven't been on track quite as much as I think they'd have wanted to have been. They've looked like they've been trying to sort a couple of bits out, but when they are, they look quick. Very few people doubt that McLaren look quick. And I think that Red Bull aren't too far behind them. There's rumours and whisperings that Red Bull are pleased with some of the changes they've made to this car, which, bear in mind, for the last 2/3 of last season wasn't as quick as McLaren. So I think they're the ones who are going to be right up there.
What about Ferrari? Because Lewis Hamilton said that he was very happy with his car.
Yeah,
So that's a good sign.
it is a good sign. It is a good sign. Ferrari look pretty confident. And again, I don't think they'll be too far off. If you were going to push me right now, we're recording this at the end of day 2 of testing. And probably when this episode is released, testing will still be going on. But as we speak right now, I would put McLaren and up there, Red Bull not far behind, Ferrari probably not far behind them. Mercedes seem optimistic, but I was at testing last year and they seemed optimistic then. We were at Shakedown with them the year before, Betty. They seemed optimistic then. In this rule set, Mercedes always seem optimistic. And then I was talking about correlation earlier. The changes they think they've made don't quite work. So I want to believe Mercedes when they say they're optimistic. But frankly, every year they've come into the season and gone, we think we fixed some of the problems of last year, and they don't. But can we tell who's definitively fastest? No. But what I think we can tell is all the things we hoped it was going to be when we were at Shakedown, Betty. I think it's close between those top teams. I think this test seems to suggest to me that the 4 quickest teams from last year will be again this year.
We just have no idea, really. Like, you're mentioning those 4 teams, McLaren, Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes, anyone, any of them could go out there and absolutely walk Australia. Like, we don't know who's going to win.
We don't. And what I really do like is that, again, I think McLaren are probably just about quickest. I don't think Red Bull are far behind. But what we don't know is what's going to happen after Friday, where teams are going to go away. They've got some time. And free practice 1 in Australia will be fascinating because then they'll have had the time to go again. Also, such a different track. Australia's a street circuit. It'll be much hotter. So it could be completely
Won't be
different.
raining.
Won't be. Well, fingers crossed it won't be raining. It's not unheard of in Australia.
No.
It's possible. Bear in mind, I'm going to the race, and pretty much every bloody race I went to last year rained, so it might well do. But yeah, it could all change. So yeah, we don't know, but we sort of are getting clues and inklings.
And just on sort of taking steps forward, who's looking good, who's looking comfortable, who's feeling confident. How are the rookies looking? There's 6 rookies that are buzzing to get their first proper season in F1 underway. Are they doing okay?
Yeah,
Hard to tell.
There's very little to report there. The great thing is none of them are stuck in a wall.
Well, that's the good news, all right?
Yeah, that's what you want. The only thing I'd say is, do you remember when Kimi Antonelli did free practice in Italy last year and came out and stormed it and looked amazing and then immediately stuck it in the gravel? There is more signs from Kimi Antonelli of him being fast and furious as we report this news on the Fast and the Curious, because he seems quick, but he also, there's been a couple of times he's ran wide a little bit. And again, he seems like he's trying to find the limit. I think he's going to continue to be very exciting to watch. I'd be staggered if out of Kimi Antonelli this year we didn't get some absolutely amazing moments, like where it's like, oh my God, this kid is quick. And then some moments of like, he's very much put it in the wall. I think, which is, you expect. Max Verstappen's first season, he showed huge signs of pace and speed, but was still a bit of a rough diamond in places. So other than that, very little to report. But the one person I'm getting most questions about, Betty, is Lewis Hamilton. Have you had time to see any of him driving a Ferrari?
I've seen a little bit of him, and he looks good. He seems happy. He seems very positive. He's doing okay. He says he's really enjoying it. I mean, that's do you get better than that at this point?
No, your summary is perfect. It is too early to tell exactly where Ferrari are gonna be. As I said, it'll be particularly interesting on a hot circuit in Australia. I noticed him just before the test talk a lot about saying how impressed he was So the last sort of two big names to leave their team and jump into a Ferrari were Sebastian Vettel and Fernando Alonso. And Lewis was sort of saying, well, I'm very impressed with how quickly they managed to get used to such a new team. He's going to have such a lot to do to get used to such a different thing. And I thought it was a bit interesting that he was sort of playing that up a little bit, suggesting, is he sort of laying the foundations for not being quite as quick as Charles? But then that's calmed a little bit as the test has gone on. So no, I think, Ferrari seem about where Ferrari were last year, and Lewis seems pretty happy. And you look at his timings in day two, very, very close to Charles Leclerc, like less than a tenth between them. So, and Lewis had done a fewer laps. So yeah, so far so good for Lewis.
I also think it's interesting because he was saying, like, he's sort of bonding to the car, like getting the car and him are getting to know each other. But testing for him is more about bonding with his engineer as well, and just getting that communication right, just knowing how each other work, trying to work each other out a little bit more. And that must be so crucial.
Sometimes different Formula One teams have such different ways of working, of getting to the same destination, but doing it in a different way, going a different route. So for people like Carlos, who've been at Ferrari for a couple of years, now have to get used to how Williams do it. Likewise, and you've got to remember as well, with Lewis in particular, just how long he's been at Mercedes. A lot of the stuff will come second nature. When you move into a new kitchen and you're cooking for the first time, and you immediately go to where you used to keep the knives and forks, but in this new kitchen, that's actually where you keep the plates. You're like, no, it's over here. There'll be a lot of that.
Can't turn the hob on.
Can't turn the hob on. Yeah, exactly.
Not working.
Basically, what we're saying is Lewis Hamilton is still getting used to where the knives and forks are kept and how to turn the hob on.
Yeah,
and he will have to practice that.
I'm still getting used to that in my kitchen. I've been here for 3 years. Anyway, let's move on to this really exciting bit that I cannot wait to announce this, Christian, because this is major. This is so good. Okay, so on our first couple of years of doing this podcast, we've done some pretty cool things. I think we've given away some cool stuff, but this is definitely our biggest ever giveaway, and I think the people are going to go wild.
Betty Glover, can you believe that one person, just from listening to this podcast, will win a pair of tickets to the 2025 Miami Grand Prix?
Yeah, it's very, very cool. I think that is by far the biggest giveaway that we have ever done on this podcast.
This is our big news, everybody. One Fast and Curious listener, or potentially two Fast and Curious listeners. If you choose to bring with you someone who also is a Fast and Curious listener, you can do that. But basically, one person will win 2 tickets to the Miami Grand Prix. What a prize to give away.
I've never gone to the Miami Grand Prix before, but you're very lucky. You've gone a couple of times and you love it, don't you?
I'm very lucky. We've got new people listening to this podcast all the time. So we should say, like, I get to go to a few of the races because I work in F1. So I'm very fortunate. I have to say, Miami is one of my absolute favourites. It's such a cool event. Betty, we'll get you there one day. I know we will.
Well, you bloody better, mate, because...
What you'd love about it, like me, is like, as a sports fan, the fact they put this race on around the Hard Rock Stadium.
Oh, like, so cool.
With the Miami Dolphins and the tennis that gets played there as well. Like F1 bowls into town at this cool stadium setting. It is amazing. So I am buzzing that we are going to be able to, give a Fast and Curious listener the chance to experience this as well.
So if you are up for this, if you want to take part, then you need to listen to our next episode, because we're going to be telling you exactly how you can win these tickets on our next pre-season preview with Karun Chandhok. But we need to say straight away, obviously, you need to be free the weekend of the 2nd to the 4th of May to enter, as that is when the race is. So do not enter if you're busy then, or you've got your uncle's wedding.
Oh, I can't do it that weekend. Well, don't enter then.
Yeah, exactly. And this prize includes tickets only. So you're going to have to make sure that you can get there, and also that you can find somewhere to sleep and you can book a hotel room.
All of that sort of thing. And this prize is courtesy of the Crypto.com Miami Grand Prix. And if you don't win the tickets through us, you can still buy them, of course. So to do that and find out more about their new Campus Pass tickets that are available this year, go to f1miamigp.com. And as Betty says, all the details on how to enter this prize and what you need to do are coming on the next episode of The Fast and the Curious.
Woo!
Betty, just before we go, we obviously want our listeners to get in touch with F1 questions. Like we rattled through a load of them at the start of this episode, and that's all well and good. But we also like the sort of more left field F1 interactions, like the things that make our wonderful listeners and viewers laugh. The sort of, as Greg says, we like to find the fun in F1, this mad, ridiculous sport. Betty, do you remember at the back end of last season, we had one of our wonderful friends of the podcast, Sam Ryder, who was on with us. And somehow we ended up talking, Greg seemed very keen in particular to talk about me getting married. And in particular, when I do get married, which I have to say, like...
This was my idea.
Was this you? Was this you?
Yes, this was me, thank you.
Okay.
Give Greg the credit.
Right,
I said you should walk down to the F1 theme tune. Walk down the aisle.
Walk down the aisle to the F1 theme tune. This is what we said.
I could just keep going.
It's so nice.
It's
You walking down the aisle with a little bunch of flowers.
Are we making my wedding an on-air feature now? Are we?
Yes.
It's like the Twilight wedding.
Oh, please, can we do it? Please get married.
Oh, David, if you're watching.
Now, very shortly, Betty.
Are you married? Are you engaged?
No.
Is there something you're not telling us?
No, I'm not. I'm not married or engaged. But very shortly after that episode went out, somebody sent me a DM on Instagram. A lovely Fast and Curious listener called Claire, who
Claire,
messaged...
Christian's gay. He will not marry you. I'm sorry.
No, Claire did not get in touch to ask me to marry her. In fact, Claire got in touch to say she already had plans to get married, which is fantastic. And she said she was going to get married in the off season. I said, Claire, keep in touch. This is wonderful. Claire, only this week, sent me this. This, Betty Glover, is the wonderful Claire marrying her husband, Steve, as Claire walks down the aisle to the F1 music.
Finally.
Claire looks amazing.
Claire looks absolutely amazing.
Oh,
But Claire,
I love it.
Claire said to me, that's my plan. You guys on the podcast were talking about my plan. I want to do this. And Claire did it in January, got married and walked down the aisle to the F1 theme music, which you and Greg are adamant I need to do.
And she's in a purple dress. She looks brilliant. She's so
in a-
good. It sounds lovely. Like when it's slowed down, it's all
Doesn't it?
classical. Like it really works. It
It
really,
really
works.
works.
Is Claire's husband an F1 fan as well? Or did she just bully him into this? How did it work?
To be confirmed, but Claire said in her original message to me, I'm a massive F1 fan. I'm getting married at the end of January, arranged in the F1 off season, naturally. I'll be walking down the aisle to the piano version of the F1 theme. None of my guests know what's going to happen, so it will be interesting to see how many of them clock on. And then, obviously, Claire has sent us that video. So, yeah. What a time to be alive. So we don't know how much of an F1 fan Steve is, but he obviously didn't hate it because I'm guessing Steve, maybe he could, maybe he couldn't have vetoed it. So we'll find out from Claire whether Steve is a fan. But yeah.
Looking at the video, I don't think a lot of people clocked it. Claire, tell us if I'm wrong, but not a lot of people are like.
Although, what are you expecting? Are you expecting half the congregation to get out like Aston Martin and Ferrari hats and be like, yeah.
That's what I would do. That's what I would do. If I was a bride, if I was a bridesmaid, I'd be going down there like.
And the bridesmaids dive down the inside.
Pit.
Yeah, no, maybe not. I bet it does work, doesn't it? I mean, listen, I've said, knowing me, I'm with my wonderful boyfriend David. No immediate plans to get married, but
David would not let you walk down the aisle.
I think
He wouldn't.
I think he would.
No, I don't. David, I just don't think he'd do it. Maybe I'm wrong.
Hang on. I don't. He's at work, so he might not answer. This might get edited out.
He's going to say yes anyway because he'll try and please you. But I don't think he would actually say yes in real life.
I don't know if he'll answer his phone.
Or would it be David walking down the aisle?
Don't really know. Let's see if David would give me permission.
Hello.
David, you're on the Fast and the Curious.
Hello, David.
Am I?
Yeah, you are. Betty says hello.
Oh, hello.
Quick question. This is not me proposing. Don't get excited. But
I didn't think that's what was happening right now.
no, if and when
I'd like to think Christian would have a more romantic way of doing it.
No, we're not getting a dog. No, we're not getting a dog. If and when we get married, would you let me walk down the aisle to the F1 music?
Yes, if it was that nice version that you sent to me.
Yeah, the piano
Sam
version.
Ryder. I want Sam Ryder playing.
You want Sam Ryder playing it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
I mean, if Sam Ryder's going to play.
So you're saying yes if Sam Ryder plays it?
I'm also saying yes for you proposing. Is this a proposal?
No, it's not a proposal. Thank you, David. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Oh, I'm so happy.
That is not me getting married.
I'm so pleased for you, Christian. Congratulations. We've got our first proposal on the Fast and the Curious.
No, you haven't.
Shall I go buy my dress?
Right, that's it for this week's episode of The Fast and the Curious. If you've got something that makes you laugh in the world of Formula One, like the fact that you've walked down the aisle to the F1 music, which it now appears that I'll be doing, providing Sam Ryder comes back to play it, you can get in touch by emailing contact@fastcuriouspod.com or sending us a message on various social media. Betty, we're back next week, aren't we?
We are. So we're back. The three of us are back. Greg will be back, and we're going to be with Karun Chandok to do a proper pre-season review. So I can't wait for that.
I think I've decided who I think will win the Formula One World Championship. So I will.
Who?
I'm not going to say now, am I?
Well, we'll do our
predictions and all
predictions, and then like we did last year. And I actually think this time we should write them down on a bit of paper and open the paper before the last race of the season. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll look at that. Right, we're back next week.
Yeah, and also everybody, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, subscribe wherever you get your podcast, because that is so vitally important to keep the Fast and the Curious ticking along.
It really is. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We'll be back next week with Greg James and Karun Chandok. From me and Betty Glover. Bye for now.
Bye.